At approximately 1:15 a.m. on April 1st, 2006, security cameras captured 27-year-old medical student Brian Shaffer walking into the Ugly Tuna Saloon, a popular bar near Ohio State University, with his friends Clint Florence and Meredith Reed. It was the beginning of spring break, and the bar was bustling with excited patrons. However, those same cameras, constantly monitored and reviewed in detail by investigators, never recorded Brian leaving the bar. Despite a comprehensive search and exhaustive investigation, Brian Shaffer appeared to vanish inside a crowded establishment. The security footage showed no alternative exits or hidden passageways, just a single main entrance continuously under surveillance. Brian Shaffer entered the Ugly Tuna Saloon that night, but he never emerged. Nearly 2 decades later, his disappearance remains a baffling mystery, leaving investigators, friends, and family wondering how someone could vanish without a trace in plain sight. I still vividly remember seeing the surveillance footage for the first time. It seemed surreal. Brian Shaffer walked into the Ugly Tuna Saloon bar near Ohio State University on the night of March 31st, 2006, and was never seen again. Brian, a 27-year-old medical student, had spent that Friday celebrating the beginning of spring break. He started the evening by having dinner with his father, Randy, who later recalled that Brian seemed particularly exhausted due to late-night studying earlier in the week. Despite Randy's private reservation, Brian went out with his friend William Clint Florence around 9 p.m., starting their night at the Ugly Tuna Saloon. The two friends bar hopped, taking shots at several establishments as they moved through Columbus's popular nightlife areas. Around midnight, they met Meredith Reed, another friend of Clint's, who eventually drove them back to the Ugly Tuna Saloon for a final round of drinks. At about 1:15 a.m., cameras captured Brian, Clint, and Meredith entering the bar together. At 1:55 a.m., Brian was again seen on camera outside the bar's entrance, chatting briefly with 2 women before stepping out of frame. This was the last confirmed sighting of Brian Shaffer. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith couldn't locate Brian despite repeatedly calling his phone. Initially assuming he might have headed home without mentioning it, they left. However, as the weekend progressed without any communication from Brian, concern intensified. On Monday morning, when Brian failed to appear for a planned trip to Miami with his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, his family officially reported him missing to Columbus police. The police response was swift and methodical. Investigators first thoroughly reviewed the security footage from the Ugly Tuna Saloon. The main entrance and exit were under constant camera surveillance, yet Brian was not seen leaving after his last appearance on camera at 1:55 a.m. Police meticulously checked every available camera angle from adjacent areas and nearby bars, but found no trace of Brian leaving the premises. Investigators examined a secondary exit, a service door leading to a construction site near the bar, but concluded it would have been challenging to navigate, particularly if Brian had been intoxicated. Nonetheless, police did consider that this route could have allowed someone to leave undetected by cameras. The search quickly expanded beyond the bar itself. Officers and canine units combed the surrounding streets and alleyways, inspecting dumpsters, questioning residents, and even searching the city's sewer system. Brian's apartment was checked thoroughly. His car was still parked outside, and everything appeared normal. The Columbus community became deeply involved. Flyers displaying Brian's picture, along with distinctive features such as his Pearl Jam tattoo and a unique fleck in his iris, were distributed throughout the area. Despite these extensive efforts, no credible leads emerged. Months later, in September 2006, a moment of hope appeared when Alexis's nightly call to Brian's phone unexpectedly rang 3 times. Although the provider explained this as a technical glitch, it briefly reignited hope. The phone pinged at a tower near Hilliard, approximately 14 miles from where Brian vanished, though this was the only notable signal in the months following his disappearance. In the years that followed, several leads arose, but ultimately led nowhere. Reports of potential sightings came from as far away as Michigan, Texas, and even Sweden, all investigated and eventually dismissed by authorities. At a Pearl Jam concert in Cincinnati, Eddie Vedder appealed to the audience for any information about Brian, reflecting the widespread attention the case received. In September 2008, Randy Shaffer tragically died in an accident at his home. further compounding the emotional toll of Brian's disappearance. A condolence message claiming to be from Brian surfaced online shortly afterwards, suggesting he might have relocated to the US Virgin Islands. Authorities quickly debunked this as a cruel hoax. In 2019, an image surfaced online of an alleged American homeless man in Tijuana resembling Brian, sparking renewed interest. Columbus police sent the photo for FBI facial recognition analysis, which ruled out the possibility of it being Brian. Today, Brian Shaffer's disappearance remains one of the most perplexing unsolved cases in recent memory. Despite years of investigation, countless leads, and significant media coverage, no definitive answers have emerged. All we know for certain is that Brian Shaffer entered the Ugly Tuna Saloon on that spring night in 2006 and seemingly vanished without a trace. Brian Shaffer grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, a small, quiet suburb just outside of Columbus. Born in 1979, he was the older son of Randy and Renee Shaffer, and from all accounts, he was someone who naturally drew people in. Friends described Brian as charismatic, funny, and outgoing, one of those individuals who could easily make you laugh and feel comfortable. After graduating from high school in 1997, Brian went on to Ohio State University, OSU. He pursued microbiology, graduating in 2003 with clear ambitions ahead. Soon after, in 2004, he enrolled in OSU's College of Medicine, beginning the intense journey toward becoming a doctor. It was around this time that he met Alexis Wagner, a fellow medical student who quickly became an essential part of his life. Their relationship blossomed, and those closest to them believed Brian planned to propose during their upcoming spring break trip to Miami in April 2006. Brian wasn't just about medicine, though. He had an adventurous side and a deep love for tropical places. He often spoke of Miami and Puerto Rico, places he'd visited and fallen in love with, drawn by their laid-back atmosphere. His passion extended beyond travel. He adored music, particularly Pearl Jam, and often talked about his dream to someday start a band. In many ways, Brian seemed torn between his stable future in medicine and the free-spirited lifestyle he admired from musicians like Jimmy Buffett. Life wasn't without its struggles. In March 2006, Brian faced one of the toughest moments of his life when his mother, Renee, passed away from myelodysplasia, a rare and aggressive form of cancer. Despite this devastating loss, Brian's friends noticed how determined he remained, focusing intensely on his studies and future plans. Though clearly grieving, he never showed outward signs of depression or despair. Instead, he appeared hopeful and excited about his career, his life with Alexis, and the possibility of a bright future ahead. Yet, everything changed that April night in 2006. It left everyone baffled at what might have happened, and as word spread around, so did the theories. When someone vanishes without a trace, we tend to look for the simplest answer. But in Brian Shaffer's case, simple just doesn't cut it. We've seen the footage, we know the timeline, we know where he was last seen and where he wasn't. There's no obvious path forward. And so, nearly 20 years later, the case survives through theories. All of them have gaps. Some lean toward logic, others veer into speculation. But in a vacuum of answers, this is what we're left with. 1. Foul play. Among all theories, foul play is the one that continues to dominate most discussions, not because it's dramatic, but because it accounts for the sheer finality of Brian's disappearance. But the question isn't just if someone harmed Brian, it's who, how, and why in a setting crawling with people, cameras, and attention. There's no evidence of a struggle inside the bar. No witnesses ever came forward to say they saw something violent happen, but many believe the key moment occurred just outside during that short interaction with the two women. While the footage itself doesn't reveal anything conclusive, it's been dissected frame by frame online. Theories have formed around body language, that Brian looked distracted or even unsettled, that the women seemed to be arguing or confronting someone. But if we remove the emotional tone and examine possible motives, we're left with a few options. Was this a targeted act? Someone lying in wait? Or did Brian stumble into the wrong interaction at the worst time? One idea is that he encountered someone offering a ride or lured him somewhere under false pretenses, like a nearby after party. From there, there, things could have escalated quickly. A robbery gone wrong, a dispute over money, a bad drug deal. Importantly, this theory also offers one of the few explanations that can coexist with the idea of Brian having left the bar undetected. The construction site near the service exit has always been a wild card, difficult to navigate but not impossible. If Brian was led out that way, possibly by someone familiar with the building layout, he could have exited without being caught on camera. What happened after that is where foul play proponents focus their attention. An isolated spot, no one around, a quick disappearance, and perhaps someone who knew how to stay quiet. What makes this theory more chilling is the case's complete lack of physical evidence. If Brian were killed, where would he be? How was his body moved without being seen? That's the sticking point. It's not that foul play is impossible, it's that whoever was involved, if anyone was, left behind no trace, not a single one. Second accident. Accidental death is another theory that remains on the table, though it's grown less convincing over time. The logic is straightforward. Brian, intoxicated, disoriented, maybe emotionally off balance, took a wrong turn and ended up in a place no one thought to look, or a place already searched but missed. The most cited possibility here is the construction site behind the bar. It was poorly lit, not monitored by full-time surveillance, and full of hazards. If Brian left via the service exit, unnoticed by the rotating camera, or during a blind spot, he could have slipped, fallen, or become trapped. Maybe in a hidden crawl space or ventilation shaft, maybe under debris, but the area was searched extensively, with dogs, multiple times. Nothing turned up. There's also the timeline problem. Brian's phone remained active briefly after he was last seen. That doesn't square well with a sudden fatal fall or a body hidden inside the construction site. His phone should have been found, if not by the police, then by someone else in the weeks and months that followed. The construction continued. People came and went. No sign of Brian ever appeared. So, unless he somehow ended up in a spot so concealed it's never been discovered, something that strains plausibility, the accident theory struggles to hold. Third, voluntary disappearance. To some, the cleanest answer is the most personal, that Brian chose to disappear. A man is grieving the recent loss of his mother, under pressure from medical school, maybe second-guessing his life path, maybe needing a reset. And yes, people have walked away from their lives before. Some planned it, some didn't. But to buy this theory, you have to believe Brian had the means and the mindset to vanish without telling anyone. Not his girlfriend, not his brother, not even his close friends. You also have to believe he maintained that separation for nearly 2 decades, never using his credit cards, never reaching out, never being spotted. No money was taken from his account, no travel records, no purchases, no sightings. Even when strange events occurred, like the fake condolence message after his father's death signed Love, Brian, US Virgin Islands, they led nowhere. It was a hoax traced to a public library. If Brian left, he left so thoroughly that no digital or physical trace has ever surfaced. That's not just rare, it's nearly impossible in today's world. So while this theory can't be ruled out entirely, the lack of preparation or evidence behind it makes it feel unlikely, and there's no clear motive. Brian had plans for the next day. He was supposed to be in Miami with Alexis, and as we know, that trip never happened. Fourth, fringe theories. When a case stays unsolved for this long, stranger ideas inevitably take root. One of the most popular fringe theories early on was the smiley face killer connection, a supposed serial killer or group targeting college-age men across the US, often leaving graffiti near water. Brian's body was never found near a river, and police have largely dismissed the pattern entirely. Still, the internet has kept it alive. Then there's the theory that Brian never left the building, that somehow he died inside the Ugly Tuna and was hidden by staff, either intentionally or by mistake. But the bar didn't shut down right away. It remained open for months. It was cleaned, inspected. No evidence ever turned up. If he were there, no one found him. Other suggestions have included secret identities, underground lives, or witness protection, the kind of theories that feel more like storytelling than deduction, but they reflect something real, the desperation to understand what happened when logic no longer provides an answer. 5. Reddit theory, the 3 women. Reading through online forums, Reddit threads, and Facebook groups that have followed this case closely over the years, I came across a theory that, while entirely speculative, tries to tie together many of the scattered and often overlooked details. It's not official, it's not backed by the police, but it's thorough and troubling. According to this theory, Brian didn't leave alone, and he didn't vanish into thin air. He may have left with 3 women, 2 of whom we know, Amber and Brighton, and 1 who remained unidentified for nearly 2 decades. This third woman, recently spotted in reanalyzed footage, arrived at the Ugly Tuna with Amber, while Brighton apparently arrived later, contradicting previous statements both women gave to police and podcast host Kelly Bruce. Why was this third woman's presence hidden for so long? That's the question that launched this entire theory. The core idea is that Brian planned to meet the women outside the bar, potentially for an after party or private hangout. He was reportedly flirting with Brighton earlier in the night, and it's possible he told his friends he was going to speak to the band as a cover to slip away unnoticed, either to avoid conflict with his friend Clint or to keep it discreet. From there, the theory suggests that Brian got into a car with the three women and left the area, and something went wrong. Maybe an overdose, an accident, a fight, or a drunken misunderstanding. The theory doesn't claim murder, but rather an unexpected death that was quickly concealed in panic. Now here's where it deepens. Brian's phone pinged in the Hilliard area after his disappearance, near Scioto Darby Creek Road. Public records show that Brighton previously lived near that location. Not just one address, two, and the now infamous Love Brian US Virgin Islands condolence message posted after his father's death, traced to a public library just a few minutes away from those same addresses. Is it circumstantial? Completely, but it doesn't stop there. Reddit users also tracked posts defending Brighton under suspicious usernames that were created solely to comment on her involvement in the case. Were these burner accounts? No way to prove it, but it adds to the unease. The theory ends with the suggestion that Brian died that night, unintentionally, and the women, possibly with others, covered it up. His phone was disposed of near Brighton's neighborhood, maybe powered on once or twice before being dumped permanently. The library hoax, possibly an ill-advised way to create the illusion that Brian had fled to start a new life. This isn't proven, it's just a theory, but it ties together footage anomalies, false statements, the phone pings, geographic proximity, and behavior that, if nothing else, warrants a second look. After looking through every angle, every timeline, and every theory, official and unofficial, I have to admit something up front. I don't know what happened to Brian Shaffer. No one really does. And that's what makes this case so haunting. But if I had to say what I believe, I lean toward foul play. Something happened to Brian that night. Something that wasn't supposed to happen. And from everything I've read, watched, and researched, the theory involving the three women, Amber, Brighton, and the unidentified third woman, makes the most sense to me. It's not a theory I take lightly. I'm not accusing anyone. But when you connect the timeline discrepancies, the hidden identities, the odd behavior in interviews, the proximity of the phone pings to personal addresses, and that strange condolence message traced to a local library, it just feels like too much coincidence in a case where nothing else adds up. Whether Brian left with them willingly, whether it was an accident that spiraled, or whether something darker took place, we may never know. But I believe the answers lie with the last people who saw him. And until someone talks or evidence surfaces, we'll be stuck in the dark, still wondering how a man walked into a bar and never came out. If you've made it this far, thank you. Brian Shaffer's case is one of the most frustrating, unsettling mysteries I've ever come across, and the fact that there are still no answers nearly 2 decades later is both heartbreaking and infuriating. What do you think happened that night? Do you believe Brian made it out of the bar? Do you think someone knows more than they're saying? Or is there still a piece of the puzzle we've all missed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what theories make the most sense to you, and if there are other cases like this you think I should cover, unsolved, overlooked, or just plain bizarre, drop them below. I'll see you in the next one.